Hello and welcome back to OVERCOMM'D. It's been a week and it's been an interesting one with EPL Stage 1 and Stage 2 basically being the Tier 1 caliber events that have happened, and in the background a bunch of smaller tournaments and as well as a few roster moves that have cropped up that are worthy of interest but obviously haven't been quite OVERCOMM'D worthy. Speaking of not quite worthy, I'm not sure if either of you followed this, but a certain record fell in the NBA and it was a bit shameful. I'm going to be honest, when I watched the highlights. I watched the initial highlights. I just saw the game. Just, 83 points. Fantastic. Watched it. I was like, was that 83? Whip out the box score. Oh. You were going to try and avoid anything like that on this show. Not going to be padding our stats, because if you watch the full breakdown of that game, oh my god, it was an embarrassment. Thorin, I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Absolute disgrace in the basketball. Hopefully the CS never looks like that.
Yes. That was the basketball equivalent of what everyone hates about CS, which is the guy who only gets equal kills and then doesn't get any real 5v5 gone round kills. Yeah, that was the
right. So that was the blame F of basketball.
Yeah. No, because blame F actually gets both. He gets the equal kills and the normal kills. It would be what people think blame F was. That's what it is.
No. Yeah, it's the old school blame F, the old school idea of blame F.
Or this would be the equivalent of really old school reference. If you know 1.6, when they first introduced that stupid mechanic in 1.6, where to encourage people in public servers to plant the bomb, they would give you 3 kills on the scoreboard for planting the bomb or something mad like that. And so essentially, this is like that. It's like if someone had the fake 40 bomb, but then you look at it and they just plant the bomb loads of times. Like, yeah.
Sounds like I'd have been a great 1.6 player, so I'm loving this. Can we update this to CS2, actually?
It doesn't actually. It sounds like that would have been horrid on Face It. Can you imagine the angry Russian that just goes GG guys go next after losing the knife round? He would be the guy that would be like, just
the same
guy.
If you don't
drop
the bomb, he just AVP. He's just like, drop bomb. And you have to give him the bomb.
Yeah. Drop AWP, блядь.
It could be worse. Hey, at least he's playing the objective and not just sitting in mid with the AWP doing nothing the entire fucking game. Like that would be a much better outcome, I'm going to be honest. It's more team play than we're used to. But let's get into this. We've had the wrong graphic up this entire time, but we don't really care. That's not a big deal. What matters right now is that we get into some conversations about Donk. Now, Donk is interesting because he's a player where you can put up some stats from last year to this year, and you can think about it and go, he has gotten worse. Then if you remove all context and just compare him to everyone in all of Counter-Strike's history, you still go, that's pretty much the best thing we've ever seen. Like, almost without fail. Like, he's gone from last year, 2025 versus the top 30, putting up unprecedented numbers, like 141 rating, 0.93 KPR, insane in every other statistic. And now this year he is the best we've ever seen from Simple. That's essentially the stats he's putting up with a 0.88 KPR, 135 rating. Like, that's just Simple's 2 best seasons look pretty much like that. It is a ridiculous thing to say, but could this still be a bit of an issue? And it wouldn't be an issue in most contexts for most teams, but could this be a small part of what's limiting Spirit's results so far? They haven't had a ridiculous Donk. This is a conversation I've had with people where I've talked about whether or not Spirit can just produce another one of those runs. If they do, how much is it just Donk deciding to win, and how much is it the team getting it right? Well, if it is just, if you're on the team, right, if you're on the side, that says it's a Donk just chooses to win thing, well, so far, he hasn't shown quite those crazy numbers, quite that level of impact. Should we be concerned, not necessarily for Donk's case for being the best player in the world, but more importantly, for Spirit's chances to go win events if he's slightly below his 2025 numbers?
I think first the way that this conversation should start is it's kind of reminiscent, at least to me, to the moments when Simple would just post a 130, 135 rating and people would go, oh, he's dropping off, oh, he's not the same player, oh, he's he's struggling individually. It is mental that we can speak about someone who's still posted a 141 since the start of this year and has had just a couple of off maps, which I guess at this point, when people see Donk go 7-15, which he had one of these maps against Bait or Mirage, or 9-18, which he had against G2, for example, in Overpass, people just go, oh, he's dropping off. When in reality, in all the other games, he's still farming, he's still destroying, and he's still one of the best players in the world. I would actually not put the angle towards, is Donk's drop-off of form leading to Spirit experiencing more issues as a team, rather than is Spirit not playing as a proper team and struggling on the team aspect and fundamentals aspect, actually harming Donk's performance a little bit. This is how I would put that idea forward, because I don't think Spirit have been playing great Counter-Strike. I think when you look at When you look at the team, some of the T sides have been very lackluster, probably even reminiscent of last year with Chopper, when people would complain that there wasn't a lot of diversity onto the T side in the offense. Now it just feels like it's a bit chaotic, and sometimes they don't even have an idea, right? So is it just to put all that on Donk and say that it's his responsibility? I wouldn't necessarily say so. I think Shiro's been playing all right, but Zontix, regardless of having these pop-off games every now and then, is still, I think, trying to get back into his comfort zone. Tenier has actually been quite disappointing for me personally, considering that he's one of the players that I was the most hyped up about in 2025 and even in late 2024. So I'd say Donk is still, I mean, he's still one of the best players in the world. It's just so crazy, the idea of criticizing someone like that for having a minor drop of form, when the minor drop of form still means that he's better than 99.9% of the players in the world. I wouldn't say that he's dropped off. From my perspective, when I watch him play, I don't feel like he's out of shape. I don't feel like he's playing worse Counter-Strike per se. I think maybe some of the team atmosphere harms that, because in the end of the day, you have to remember, when you have so many younger players, and Magix, even though he's a good friend of Dong and they've been playing for... Actually, Magix is more experienced. They've been playing, I was going to say, for the same time on the highest level. Magix has more tier 1 experience than Donk, but he's still a young IGL, so you feel like Donk probably needs to take a little bit more responsibility and micromanage people, or help people with ideas a little bit more on this lineup alongside Shiro. So I think maybe that could be part of the reason, but I personally don't feel like he's dropping off.
One, technically, I'm going to take the arguments of the prosecution and say, if the only reason Donk was the best is his whole team sets him up, then obviously the team's to blame if his numbers drop. There you go. QED. Just like ZWoo fans, thank you. Donk can never be wrong. Obviously, that's not even the right thing. But here's why I don't criticize Donk. Because yes, first of all, forget like one of them. He's still arguably the best player. Like it's still like a debate whether he's better than ZWoo. By the way, any ZWoo fans who goes, yeah, but ZWoo's numbers are better now. Listen, fuck, you spent the whole of last year telling us that isn't what makes you better. So sorry, ZWoo fans. I know you do this on every topic, but you don't get to have your cake and eat it. Lose some weight, you fat fucks, metaphorically. Then the other thing is this. Actually, I think it's unfair. Well, the funny thing is, ironically, this is actually the point I made about ZWoo in his first year in 2019, is that it's not actually a reasonable expectation ever to say the following: you have to be the best player in the server every time we play, then we can win the game. I don't even think it's reasonable, by the way, beyond very extreme circumstances, to even say you have to be the best player in your team every game. Think about that. What I just said there is mad. You don't even have to just be like top fragging on you have to basically top frag the whole server, and then we might win. We're not even guaranteed the win. Like, and you're as good as people like ZWoo and Donk are. I actually feel it is unfair if you going a tiny bit down makes the results go bad, because realistically, even some of the greatest players of all time, take any player that wasn't one of those superhuman ones like Simple and ZWoo, take like Nico, even olofmeister. People don't know, if Nico had won the Boston Major, he didn't actually have that great a series overall. He wouldn't have been the best player, but he could have won it. If you think when olofmeister was in Fnatic, this game's what Fusha carried too, you know, that Olof didn't. So to me, I agree. That's the thing that I think is so unfair about what we do with Donk and ZWoo. I always say last year that, like, the joke is, ZWoo was so good that I've remembered every single bad map he ever played, because there was only about 25 of them or something like that. The point there is, though, that's only to critique him against the best player to ever play Counter-Strike. It's not to say that he can't have a bad map. That's totally human to do that. There's nothing sinister about it. So I've got to say, I don't really actually understand why people are worried on the Donk side of this. To make a more serious point with the joke I made, if anything, the question I would have would be, yeah, is this something to do with how Magix calls, or how they work when there's no way, or no Magix but playing a supportive role in the team? Because obviously they brought Zontix back somewhat in the same role, but yeah, Magix has to have had some sort of a hit, because he's just obviously got extra brain processing power going towards the calling. So I would be more concerned about what they're doing around him, because yeah, the form Donk is doing right now is still good enough to win any tournament in theory. I mean, people don't realize how crazy we just got numbed to numbers due to Donk. Like, you know, there's that one, I saw someone posted it either on Twitter or Reddit the other day, where it was like Donk's lifetime stats on Dust 2 at tier 1. He has like a 1.5 rating or something mental, which is like, you have to understand, people were going, it's like he's having a life game every time. That would be beyond a life game, mate. That would be like an inhuman, like greatest game. That's his average, mate. That's impossible. So I'm pretty sure I do find it hard to critique him as a player and imagine it's like his level is why Spirit is worse. Because his level, if anything, he's overqualified for the position of star player still. And then I'll just throw this in there as well. He's still just entering his 3rd year at Tier 1 as a pro player. Like, is he supposed to really just be the best player in the world every month for like 2 straight years? That's kind of bonkers.
The real indictment isn't on him, is it? It's not on him, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The indictment is, at the end of the day, on Spirit. And that's basically where I'm going with this and why I brought this up. Sure. I thought it'd be interesting. It's because, yeah, any other player in any other situation who is considered an all-time great player playing on a vaguely good team, you see those numbers, you're like, all right, so how many trophies? Like, how many grand finals? How many deep playoff runs? So far, they've made 2 semi-finals this year. They've yet to win anything. We now see them at Pro League. They're in the quarters. That's great. Maybe they can turn that into something more successful. But they haven't really shown us, at least in terms of the quality of play, a game that we expect to be title-worthy. Like, have we? We haven't really seen a next step taken. It's post-Chopper, removing the worst IGL to have ever spoken Russian. They look as bad or worse.
I'll tell you what I think is also more of an indictment, which is the context that, unlike last year, I actually do think that the elite end of the table right now is a tiny bit weaker than it was, for example, in the second season last year, where Fury was awesome and Falcons was hitting on all cylinders. You had all these teams that were like, it felt like on the rise, getting into... I actually think, if anything, this is one of the reasons people are somewhat critical of Vitality when they're setting all these like records again, because you look at who they're beating, and it's like you're beating like a slightly lackluster Fury, you're beating Paravision, who shouldn't really even be in that position. You're not even having to play a team like Spirit. Actually, there's another thing. Another problem if you're Spirit is this. If you go to the first season last year where they only won the Blast Bounty, or the like that dodgy PGL, you can just go, yeah, but it's Vitality. It's not like there's Vitality eliminate them, boys. They're getting eliminated by other teams. So I think also that I think if anything, you could argue the other way around. No matter what you think of the Magic's change, this first season so far could have actually been an amazing chance to maybe get, like, if not a trophy, like a bunch of finals. They could have had like 3 finals in theory, you could say.
Yeah, you could. I think a lot of people were maybe a bit disappointed because they imagined that this team would just smash it out the bat straight away, right? With Magix and Zontics being back, people thought, okay, they will just need 1-2 events and they will start dominating again. Tenier is going to get more freedom. And that's one of the reasons I mentioned Tenier as well, because I think I was one of the people that was very excited about Tenier getting more space on this team and being the secondary star to Donk. But his numbers have not really been up there. And I completely agree. I think it's a little bit unfair to judge Donk on the back of everything that's going on. Especially if you look at, for example, I don't know, Furia is struggling. Everyone's talking about Fallen not being as clutch. We mentioned Molodoy choking in some important moments. Kinder's opening stats on T sides have dropped to around 36% success on T sides with 36% attempts, right? And you're looking at Donk, who's supposedly dropped off a little bit. He's still standing on 36 attempts and 43.8% success, considering how lackluster the T sides have been from Spirit, considering the lack of synergy with some of the utility, with some of the setups, the lack of fundamentals, the lack of ideas. He's still a one-man army. The big question there is, can they win a map without Donk? The answer is no. But does that mean that we need to, blame Donk whenever they lose and he's having an off map? I don't think that's the answer. And I agree with you, Duncan. I think it's just unfair. Because when you look at the maps that they've lost, first things first, EPL, they looked very good, I thought. Bar that one map against Bait, I thought they played good Counter-Strike. That one map against Bait that they lost and they had no chance and it wasn't even close was Donk's worst map of the event. So the questions for Spirit should be, how do we make it so that when Donk has an off map every 10 maps or 15 maps, which is still ludicrous because he can still win us all the other ones, bar that one, can we have a high enough floor to actually be competitive and beat some of these teams? And here we're talking about a deeper team issue because we're not talking about you losing a map to Vitality or Falcons or Mouse or you get the point, a top 5 team. We're talking about them losing a map to Bait and being crushed by Bait, playing with a 16-year-old Spirit Academy Oper that had 2 HOTV officials before he joined Bait, right? So if you're volatile enough that when Donk has an off map, you can lose to Bait, that means that you're probably not ready to lift trophies as well, or you're just relying on Donk having great games every single time, every single day, which is completely possible. I think they can still turn this season around for themselves if they are to win EPL. I know a lot of people are trying to sell that this is Mouse's opportunity to lift the trophy. I'm actually looking at it from a different perspective where I would say EPL for me is the great opportunity for Spirit to actually win a trophy. And then maybe get the confidence up on some of these guys. Maybe Magix is going to start feeling a little bit more confident in his own ideas as an IGL. Maybe Staehr is going to improve on his individual performance a little bit based on that. But yeah, I don't really feel like Donk has dropped off. I just think this is a much younger team than people want to admit, and they just think that this team should go in and win every single trophy. Whereas in reality, you have a 20-something-year-old IGL that's IGLing for the first time. You have a struggling Staehr. You have who again has 1 year of tier 1 experience. This is not to be forgotten because he is 24, 25 years old, but he was playing on teams like Gun5 and Force before that, so you can't really compare it. You've got Zontix, who had a half-year break from competitive Counter-Strike. So I feel like that with the lack of, with the, I guess, not lack of presence from Chopper, who was maybe not, the best in-game leader in the world, but is still a lot more experienced, still a lot more tenure, probably was a bit more of a leader for these guys inside and outside the server alongside Halley. I think those are factors big enough for Spirit to struggle a little bit at the start of the season for a couple of months, and for us to just give them the green card and say, okay, this is actually, as much as it might sound like a crazy statement to say about a team like Spirit because of the names and the value of players and everything, but this is a longer term project from them. It's not the type of a team that you put together to win a trophy in 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. You put this team together hoping that in the second season of the year, they will start dominating and winning trophies, but you have to give them a couple of months to make it work. And I don't think that's going to harm Donk's individual form at all. He's still one of the best players in the world.
How unfair this contrast is. Zero, when he did his slump in the second season last year, was way worse than this statistically. And everyone still was like, he's allowed to have a few tournaments off and not be the best. Whereas what
that's
we're
not
doing
even a
now
slump
is
for Donk.
People like, is Donk washed? If he is, then you just admit he must be the fucking goat, mate. If this is his bad level, fucking hell. Can I get some bad players like this on FaZe, please?
Yeah, the real... the part that really frustrates me and that really puts this all together, if you look at T-side opening rates and T-side opening success rates, so I'm still using this top 30 filter just because the events this year have been a bit messy with online portions, offline portions, whatever. So Donk and FlameZ have about the same opening attempt rate, and the success rate is within 0.2%. Donk is 0.2% lower. And yet we look at Vitality's T-side, we look at the type of openers FlameZ takes, and we're like, holy crap, it's gift wrap. It's on a plate.
Yeah.
And everything works so well around it, and everything's so well thought out, and they're able to win events off the back of it. Donk, fractionally worse performance in terms of the actual numbers he gets out of it, despite way less help, and the team off the back of it does fuck all. That's the real...
By the way, isn't it also the exact same premise as well? Oh, yeah. If you compare it to last year, where there was times when Donk would have like 60% success rate on opening kills. Nobody can have that. I still don't even believe he had that. That still looks like a bog, or like, is there something wrong with HLT? The idea like, oh, guys, he's dropped off. He's only at 42% on 33. What are you talking about? That's what... Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that immediately. Yeah, that's good enough for me. Okay, lock that in. Bang.
You know why that is hypocrite, by the way? It's very hypocritical, because when Kinder joined Fury and he started hitting the 45-50% success rate on the 35 opening attempts conversion, everyone was saying he's the best entry in the world. He's reaching Donk levels. Yeah. And now Donk drops to the same numbers and people are saying he struggles. I didn't even know people were criticizing Donk individually, by the way. This is something I found out of Kingt when he told us the topic, and I'm still trying to process this. If you're watching really... Donk play...
It's not like there's a mass consensus that he's playing terrible. Right. It's just that there's been a noticed drop in his performance. And my point was more basically just...
I also feel like surely it's connected. Like this. Isn't this also connected to the idea that on the contrast, Zero's having maybe his best period like ever in this core, etc. So I think it's also contrast is what making it seem like that. Whereas obviously they were so close last year, you know.
I guess so, but then in the same time, if you're comparing, like Zero gets a lot of space, and I know the favorite argument of everyone is that he's a team player and he does everything for the team. He actually does get a lot of freedom to do what the fuck he wants, right? He's one of the two opers probably, and the second one is Nikudos, who everyone was criticizing for having that style, who's gonna entry on some T sites with an AK and just go first as an oper and just refuse to play the op. He gets a lot of freedom on Vitality, but if you're comparing Zero to Donk, I think the valid details that you should be taking into account is the fact that Donk relies on his teammates a little bit more on the setup because he is going in first a lot of the time or most of the time. And also literally last week, And people, if they haven't watched it, they can go back and watch the segment we did talking about how perfect Vitality's Counter-Strike is on the T sides. Vitality have the best setups ever. And I know this is the team. I know this is their, doing. And they should be, I guess, given credit for how easy they've made the game for some of their players as a team. But in the end of the day, we can't, in all realness, sit here and say it is as easy for Flames to get entries as it is for Donk, right? For Donk is probably a little bit harder when things are not going well, when the communication isn't as clear, when fundamentals are not great. And even that comparison with ZywOo, I just think, sure, ZywOo is better this year. I agree that he's the best player in the world right now, but you have to take it into consideration what we've been mentioning pretty much, I think, every single time for the last 4 episodes whenever we've had a conversation regarding either Vitality, ZywOo, Donk, or anything else. There is a difference between the caliber of teams that we're talking about right now as a team, as structure, as fundamentals. And this is not to be ignored.
All right, since we're like defending Donk, I'll do the thing where I just attack ZywOo unnecessarily, like a childish fanboy. So here's all I'll say, food for thought for you guys. Think about how it was last year when ZywOo had arguably, in fact, I think they might just be the best team to ever play Counter-Strike. So when ZywOo had the best team to ever play Counter-Strike across the board and collectively, he was neck and neck, or slightly being out-edged by Donk statistically and with the eye test, or when Donk had a semi-flawed team. Here's the food for thought. Let's just reverse the scenarios. Give ZywOo a slightly flawed team with some players that I say questionable, maybe an IGL that hasn't done it before, and then give Donk the best roster ever to play Counter-Strike. Would they be neck and neck still? I actually don't have an answer for that. I suspect not, but it's certainly an interesting thought experiment.
I think it's impossible to have an answer because Donk has never played with an IGL that's a little bit flawed in that sense, right? Because he's only played under Apex.
He hasn't needed it, mate. That's what's so. Yeah. That's why I genuinely think at the end, I'm not even gassing him. Donk will just be the GOAT when it's all said and done. Like, if you notice, with Donk, the only question is why aren't we winning the tournament? It's not even like, wow, we're not even making playoffs. Like, that's like the joke is. It feels like Donk is I've said this in the past, I think he is the most auto-win group stage player ever. Like, he just gets you the playoffs every time, pretty much.
Yeah, let's wrap it up there. Let's get into our second player. There was another player I wanted to touch on. This is less about superstardom and more about stardom. You know, there's been a lot of hysteria surrounding Astralis and Staehr specifically over the course of the last, like, 3-4 months, maybe even a bit longer. Essentially, the idea is he even a star? Do we want him in star roles? Can he perform in star roles? Can he be your star rifle? And basically what we've seen so far this year, I want to put forth that, yeah, he actually is capable of being a star player on a team that's going to win games and, let's not say, become very super elite, but at least be a solid top 10 team, which, in terms of the modern scene we're in, is actually an achievement, given Astralis' current level of investment, given Astralis' name brand on their players. Like, Staehr has been good out of star roles. He has put up impressive numbers, and we have some stats here just to demonstrate it. He's got a top 10 rating versus the top 30. He's got a very strong KPR at number 20, but it's tied with like a bunch of players, so it's it's right in there in the mix with all the other stars in the world. An elite level of ADR, and of course a very strong round swing percentage, which number 6 amongst all riflers, which you just don't see riflers putting up very positive round swings, especially not high volume riflers. They tend to take a lot of silly deaths, a lot of cheap deaths. And just to shout out some Skybox Edge numbers in terms of full buys, his roles, he's described as a star. His roles are still not expected to put up insane stats. The comparison value has his rating around like a 1.02 or something like that, and he in gun rounds is more like a 109, 110. He is a fantastic little rifler, and I do think he has earned the respect now that we can stop doubting if Astralis can win, if they are hamstrung by having him in star roles. Finally put that to bed and just talk about what Astralis can do now that they have that question answered. Any thoughts? Any detractors? Any anti-Staehr movements here?
In terms of, no, I wouldn't say anti-Staehr movements. Actually, quite far away from that. I would say I don't look at Staehr as someone that should be a superstar on a team. And one of the things is I have been watching Staehr since literally the beginning of his career. Right? I remember when he was on Sprout. When he played on the academy for a little bit, when he was coming up with a guy called Marix, and obviously Marix went over to OG Academy after that. He was supposed to be a massive talent coming out of Luxembourg. It didn't quite pan out for him. So I've watched Staehr play for many years. He's gone through a lot of different positions. One of the most valuable qualities of Staehr, I feel like, is that he's a very intelligent player. I know people just want to focus on the mechanical side of things, right? But if you look at the way that he moves, the decisions that he makes, the way that he navigates the map, I mean, for anyone that watched that Furia game that Astralis played and won 2-1, the Inferno, which was a 21-9 out of Staehr, and he dropped what, 4 opening kills, 6 multi-kill rounds. He was great. He just annihilated Furia. A lot of the fights that he's winning, he's making them look easy for himself, right? Which I think is a very underestimated quality for a lot of players, where they're able to just set themselves up in a great way and they know which fights are favorable and when not to force the issue. I don't think he has that issue if you compare him to someone else that's a space taker or an opener. We can use Flamesy as a good example, because we did have that conversation last week about 2025 and pre-2025 Flamesy having ants in the pants. I don't think Staehr does have ants in the pants. In a certain way, I just can't imagine that he should be the superstar. I think what we're seeing right now on Astralis is Staehr showing that he's better than this team and that he can be a star on a team like Astralis. I think the most ideal way at least for me, the way to imagine a player like Staehr's future is you can be the second or third best player, maybe the second best rifle if you have a superstar Oper on a top 5 team. But in that sense, if we can quantify him as a star, I think he is a star in that sense, right? He can be the flames of vitality for some other team, I think. And maybe even in a more valuable way, because I don't think he's limited to just being that aggressive guy that's going to run him first on the T sides and go for a lot of opening fights on the CT side, because obviously this is what he's doing now on Astralis and it works out well for him. But I think there's a lot more depth to his game, which is coming in from the fact that he's played multiple different positions and roles over the course of the last couple of years. He's a little bit more intelligent. I think his utility usage is pretty decent. He's an all-around good player. All around, I just can't look at Staehr play and be like, this is a clear problem. He's got a weakness here. I think he's just very, very good. A very good all-rounded player, which in some sense, obviously, he's got the skill to dominate against some of the best teams in the world every now and then. I don't think he should be the guy to rely on if you're a team to carry your asses every single time you're playing a very important game. But he's great to be your second, third best player if you want to win trophies. I definitely believe he's got the potential for that.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ted said at the end there. That was actually, I was going to wait and make a point myself. The real issue is this. He's not someone who can be like the #1 option on a team that's going to like contend for trophies and be a perennial playoff team, etc. I actually don't think that was ever even his career trajectory. Like my point as to why when he was in this team even a year and a half ago, as to why I actually thought he was poorly done by is when he first joined this team, it's when they had those super team players, the ones when around the time when they kicked Blame F, where at the time everyone else was a massive name and a HLTV top 20 former player. So the issue you had was he didn't get all his roles back then. He really was more of like a dog's body doing what they needed, and he was kind of like earning his keep as the new guy, even though already at that point in time, by the way, if you saw what he did on Sprout, he was already arguably a better player than some of these guys. Some of those people were in like bad career form. So I think the difference is, I do think it was the right move in the past year or so to give him essentially like the best positions for him, and you have seen the best numbers. So he is the star of this Astralis, but I also think that's why this Astralis unfortunately isn't actually good enough. I'm with you. If you had him as, I'll just be conservative and just say the second best player. If you had like some shit hot AWPer, or you had some like, let's say like really good lurky type rifler on this team, there'd be a very, very, very good team that could be like I say, they could be in every playoff, they could be mixing up, they could be getting big wins. So I actually don't think he carries much criticism at all. I also think if you watch him, I think it's also quite accurate. He's not someone who's going to like blow your mind when you watch him eye test wise in the POV. He has above average skills. Sometimes they look like they're bordering on very good in terms of mechanics, but even then he's not some like whiz kid or some wonderkind. If I actually think, if anything, that's something of a sign of why Denmark isn't as good in CS anymore. This guy in Blame F are the best Danish players. Like, that's not even an unreasonable statement, but unfortunately that statement of being best Danish player just doesn't hit as hard as it did 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, when that meant you could be contending for best in the whole world. So I think if anything, if I actually think he's an example of someone where he's actually done a lot of the carry work of keeping Astralis relevant. I know a lot of people have looked at the IGLing and the AWPing, etc., but I think this guy's been the one consistent piece you had in this team. You could look pretty much any time in the last 2 years and he just did his job. I also think as well, he is someone where when you watch his game, he's not being like selfish or anything. I think he is an impact player who provides a lot of value to the team. The issue is just, again, would you rather be a slightly smaller fish relative to a bigger pond and be the second or third best player and like, win some titles. Like, I mean, the obvious example would be, if people want a contrast, this guy could walk tomorrow and be on like a G2 or a Liquid or some of these teams that are a bit more troubled, you know. But if he just stays as the best player on this team, yes, it's probably going to be good individually for him, but it doesn't look like the team will have sort of many big places to talk about.
But that's the follow-up, because the idea that he would be more suited to being the second best player on the team, I don't think that's unreasonable. My problem is more just with, there's been a lot of consternation about him not being as a role player, how much that's actually a limit for the team, a problem for the team. I still think he can play the roles he's playing at the level he's playing, and the team, someone else on the team steps up, filling in that mold, as you said, of a proper good AWPer, a good lurky type player who's going to close rounds. So in that sense, there's two options here. There's two players here on this team. Fresh additions who fill exactly those roles. So I've got to ask you this. Do they have that potential? Could you see a FaZe who's not necessarily the best player in the world, but who's, pushing for like top 5 AWPers in the world, actually taking that sort of mantle? Potentially a Ryu, who's actually a baller lurker, who does develop into the player that some of us have hoped he would become because he was such a great closer and lurker back in Tier 2, now in Tier 1. Is there some potential in these players that either one of you see as potentially creating that situation where there is a number 1 star and Staehr can be that number 2, just adding all that value?
Do I think the player that can be the number 1 star of Astralis, if that's not Staehr, is already on the team? The answer is no. I don't think any of Ryu and FaZe can be remotely better than Staehr, because we're talking about Staehr, in my opinion, could easily be considered a top 10, top 15 rifler in the world. Easily top 10.
By the way, on his Maui's done his top 20
Sure.
players so far. He actually had Staehr of all players number 15, so he actually did give him props. Like, he has had him as a star level player.
No, I think in terms of how complete of a player he is and how high the ceiling of him, and actually how high the floor of him, I think is the angle that we should be looking at, is very impressive. If you want someone to be the number 1 star on Astralis and to be remotely better than Staehr, and the guy to step up in big moments, you just need a straight up superstar. I don't think there's two ways about it. Now, the tricky part is, can you have another aggressive type of guy to come into the team and be the superstar, and then for that not to harm Staehr's individual performance, then maybe you need to jiggle some of the roles. In an ideal world, Ryu has to be the guy that steps up a little bit more. I think he's had some issues with getting accustomed to playing on Astralis and maybe getting used to that level of competition, even though he hasn't really been having too many bad games. But even if you look at the way that, for example, they're distributing the creation of space on the CT sides, because one name that we haven't mentioned is Yabi. Yabi's been playing good, but Yabi's not... Yabi, again, is the guy, that's the issue. He's, again, not the rifle that should be your best rifler, right? So if you let's say, accept that Staehr and Yabi are good enough right now to be on a very high level, Yabi is a lot more passive on CT sides. The only two players that are actually creating space and making moves for this side of Astralis on CT sides are Staehr and FaZe. Do you need a third guy? I think you do. If you want to have another star over Staehr, or another player to be at least a 50-50 with him, the ideal way to look at this, for me at least, would be you need a guy that can be kind of like a Robs type of player, who you can give some star roles on the CT side, but then he's going to be your lurker on the T side, but he's going to be an aggressive lurker. For example, I don't know, maybe you can look at a player that shares a similar profile to Spinks, or even a Nerds, by the way, who, if he gets removed out of Liquid and is able to get back to his form, I think he can strengthen them up. But in reality, I feel like the angle that Astralis went with at the start of the season was, we're hoping that Ryu is going to elevate himself to be our number 1 star when it comes down to rifling, and then Staehr could be a 50-50 with him, or even a 40-60 alongside Ryu. So yeah, I wouldn't say that FaZe for me is an issue, because I think in general there's a lack of high quality AWPers and good AWPers in Counter-Strike, and again, that's a conversation we already had. I think FaZe's logical enough, reasonable enough with the moves he makes. I think he's skilled. He's definitely not 0.001% most skilled AWPers out there in terms of mechanics, but he's an all-around good AWPer with a decent level, and I think he's been playing good Counter-Strike on this team. So for my money, at least, this Astralis, if we're talking about this iteration, how this could become a very good team, I'd say they're one roster move away, or Ryu improving. But if you are making a roster move, I'm looking at Ryu or potentially Yabi as the people that you need to remove to bring in a very, very big name if you want to take this project to the next level.
problem is you always have to put it in context. Like if you have Staehr, but like I have some other big names, then it's fine for him to play this with. If my third best player is going to be Yabi or Ryu, then yeah, we're going to have problems because our star's not enough to carry the squad. The problem is Ryu's just mid to me. He's not bad. He's just all right. He hasn't failed. He's just been all right. The thing is Yabi has like impact, but he doesn't have big numbers. The joke is, look, it didn't work out why they did this. We're talking about, imagine if they could just get like, you know, a strong lurky type, like Staehr, you mean? The guy they had on the, probably still looking book somewhere, like, what are we even doing? But I get it. It didn't work out for whatever reason. And then he just magically dipped, no reason given really. And it's just never to return as a yes for whatever reason. So I don't get that myself. The problem with this team as well is this. I do think this squad, look, I never ever have thought hooksy was a fraud because I don't think you can actually do the things he did if you were a fraud. But I do think he was slightly overrated as a caller. And I think this team actually shows it because they're not bad. Like, actually, they're a decent little upset team and they're usually like this close to making a playoffs run, etc., even though they'd probably do nothing if they got there. But I do think if you look at the squad, it's an example of where we can't do this thing in CS where we only look at superstars. Superstars are brilliant, but there's very few of them to go around. If you ignore the superstar part, the baseline team of this level of this team is pretty good though. That's the other thing. So I actually also feel like if you're hooksy, can't you get a little bit more of the team? Like you have enough baseline to be in all the games. Like I feel like there's nothing, by the way, Astralis has a lot of close games against any level of opposition. So it's not even, we're talking about quite fine margins to be in a much more relevant team. And I don't think a lot of that falls on Staehr for me. The problem with the FaZe one as well is this. I do think he's been good and I think it was a good signing, but I also think it shows where Astralis as a team is, because where Astralis as a team is, that is a good signing. For the old Astralis and a team that used to have Device, I mean, that's nothing. Like, he's never going to beat Device. And I would be very shocked if FaZe is ever actually a top 10 player in Counter-Strike. Maybe he can be like a bottom of the top 20 type player. And if he is, if we think about the analogy of like, apparently Maui has Staehr's 15th. If Staehr was 15th and FaZe was, say, like 19th or 20th, I don't think he was actually on Maui's list. No, he wasn't. He didn't make it. If he could make it to the bottom, that might be just enough to actually make this team relevant, though.
Yeah, because this is their first playoff appearance, isn't it? Like this.
I think so, yes.
And they're one game away at every other event, so you know they're not that far.
No, they are playing good Counter-Strike. In that sense, that's why I kind of ignored hooksy as the topic, because I agree with you, Duncan. I think hooksy is a good enough in-game leader. You can probably get a little bit more out of your numbers, but in general, when you look at a Counter-Strike that Astralis play, for example, on T-sides, because for whatever reason, that's become my second job, just being critical to people being bad on T-sides. Astralis has better T-sides than a lot of the teams above them. In terms of ideas, in terms of executions, in terms of the way that they combine some of the players, because hooksy's always been a guy to sacrifice himself, but then you have Staehr going in first on more setup rounds where he has better conditions to get the opening. Yabi's actually been that aggressive type of lurking player. I think one of the interesting things to me is the dynamic between Yabi and Ryu. Who's going to be the aggressive lurk and who's going to be a little bit more supportive? And do you want to have Ryu being a support guy throwing in nades for his teammates alongside FaZe, or you want that to be somebody else? So there's a couple questions when it comes down to the dynamic, because obviously it's good to have the IGL going in first and sacrificing himself, and then you allow Staehr to play the mid round, or you allow him to go in first on easier rounds. But in general, as you said, it's very, very thin margins. Even if they don't change anything fundamentally with the structure of the team, it just feels like you give them a little bit more time and they get more comfortable, because a lot of people tend to forget as well the fact that this is a new team. It's as the same time that we're saying that about Spirit or some other teams. I think Astralis can have the carte blanche for 1 or 2 months where they've already made playoffs at one event. They've come very close to making playoffs at every single other event they've played. It's not really Astralis have had results that we can quantify as being an abomination to the level that we expect out of them. I think they've been playing solid Counter-Strike. It's just sometimes you like the star level. But for my money, this is a team that, for whatever reason, should be a lot more valued than a lot of the other teams around the top 10. I think they can make playoffs pretty consistently, or at least be very close, just be one game away. If you're comparing them with G2, for example, which I still hold to a high regard, even though they have their own issues, right now I would put those two teams on the same level, just about. I don't really see. Maybe the edge with G2 is that they just have a lot more firepower probably than Astralis. But in terms of what they're getting out of their pieces, I think is decent. Ryu improves his individual performance a little bit. That Astralis team can start making playoffs almost every single time, and especially if FaZe keeps on improving.
Yeah, it's a fascinating team to talk about, an interesting conversation, but a headache to watch, because at the same time as hooksy does sometimes, look like the caller that's promised, you know, like a really good Danish IGL who's got this idea of how he's going to run his team and how he's going to set his players up. He also has games where it's like, this is just a nightmare. Like every third nuke he picks goes completely down the shitter. Like it's just a bunch of gambling nonsense that just gets punished. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for me across the board of the Astralis as to who exactly I blame at every event. But I do think they have enough pieces to fulfill that sort of idea that you're bringing up, Ted.
That's fair, but let's say you compare him to some other IGLs. How many in-game leaders would you say right now there are out there that you're holding to the same account as hooXi that have worse pieces than hooXi but are getting better results than him? Because if you're comparing, for example, for me, Snappy is the obvious example, or I don't know, even Alexi's probably still one of the best IGLs in Dota, and you could say that he has better pieces. Are these people getting better results than Astralis in reality? I mean, we're talking 2026 right now. We're talking the international Astralis, right? So we're forgetting about Na'Vi and the major that they had, but this year Na'Vi, this year NIP. If you look at the roster of NIP, in reality, you could probably say that this team should be a little bit better than Astralis, no? When you look at the players, you have Kaspersky, who's a massive talent. You have Karen, who's supposed to be a high fragging output player. You have Rinko, who's supposed to be, according to a lot of people, a little bit more electric, and he is more of an X Factor Oprah. And you have Shush, who's a very, very consistent support player, and you don't have that, you know, volatility of Ryu and when he's going to be able to get to that level. So there's a lot of teams that on paper have better pieces than Astralis, but Astralis is still playing better Counter-Strike than them. For me, that has to fall a little bit on the coach and the IGL and the work that they're doing with the team, because in the end of the day, I might like the players on the team, but that doesn't mean that they are the best. That doesn't mean that when you look at this lineup, you're thinking this is a team that should be making playoffs. This is probably not the association that a lot of people make with this team the first time they look at it, and yet they are playing good Counter-Strike, and they are competitive against mostly all the teams that they're playing.
Right. Let's leave it there with I think a slightly generous interpretation of who NIP's players are, aside from Casper, but that can be a debate we'll have off the air or another time, because, I'm not sure it's that much.
We're talking about a general idea of expectations towards the players, not what they have been doing, but what you'd expect out of them.
If it's taken you over a year and a half to like fall off on your wrinkle expectations, bud, you need to...
I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful. I'm delusional beyond belief when it comes down to Rinko. Yeah. I still believe to some extent.
But let's talk about dwindling. An org that's, well, kind of fallen from not necessarily grace, because I think their primary objective as an org has always been being sensible, well financially run, and all this kind of stuff, rather than necessarily just the biggest team in the world. But ENCE have dropped their active lineup onto the transfer list, and they have instead decided that they are going to be developing the next generation of Finnish talent, whatever that's going to end up looking like. But essentially, the reason I want to talk about them today is, well, who wants ENCE's roster? And we'll go, I think, initially with just the entire 5, the entire lot, or maybe even just a core of it, just lumping them together. Who would want them? Who could get some use out of them? Then after that, we can dig into some specific players. But thank you, Ted, for spoiling your answer. Nobody wants to be the core of this roster. You couldn't put 3 of these players together and tell me someone would be better off with these 3 guys than, well, whatever they currently have.
In all realness, no. No. I mean, I want to let Duncan on this one as well, because I'm curious to see what he thinks about some of the pieces on the team, because obviously, for some of them, I think we are going to be talking a little bit more when it comes down to tier 2. But my first and short answer, like the one word that comes out of my brain and out of my mouth straight away, is no. Please don't pick up this team with that 5-man lineup. Please don't do it.
I mean, the problem is, I think this is you have to remember the level this squad was on. First of all, everyone was delusional if they ever imagined once you lost not only the stars, you lost like Nerds and some pies, but you also lost Snappy, and then now you've lost the court. So you have none of the pieces that made ENCE interesting for the last few years. So once you take that out of the equation and you realize realistically, ENCE in theory isn't even supposed to necessarily be on the level of the Gamer Legions of the world. They're supposed to be a team that's like trying to break into arguably tier 2. They're more like a tier 3 sort of an org financially and where they're at in terms of being able to attract talent. The big problem they have is the best player in their team was the Finnish player, was Podi, the guy who actually even looked good at that Elisa tournament where they surprisingly won and beat Heroic. Like, he actually looked like he could play in some other decent teams. Beyond that, though, Ooh, like put it this way, I'll say SDY, some guy young, probably as like a role player could play in a better team, but it seems like at this point in his career, he's tried it a few times, he just wants to be an IGL, doesn't he? So my issue is, as an IGL, would I put him in the top team? Probably not, if I'm being honest. Like, I feel like he's more like a slightly overqualified support player, because then he brings the experience, he's always a decent fragger. So maybe those two players could. I don't think the others can play at all. Like, I always thought Krasnal was just all right in past online teams. The Neityu or whatever they get, that was just French people hyping him. When he was in the team, it was fucking ENCE show, and it was Podi. That was the people everyone liked. The Neityu guy did that. He's the person, by the way, that reminds me of one of the best things that Kassad actually brought to analysis, which is changing the term from he's a really good player because someone has good aim to he's a sharp player. Because the whole point of the sharp player is it just implies you've got nice aim if you watch them play. That doesn't always translate to you're a really good player and you can put that to use and get the kills and have impact. I think if you watch the Neityu guy, look, his AK looked pretty sharp, looked pretty spicy, but I just never saw the star potential in the game. And the problem is that Elisa tournament was 1.5 years ago now or something, so it wasn't like it was 5 minutes ago. So I don't think he ever actually like blossomed like an ENCE did. And then for me, the problem is Fiku has never been a bad player, but he's just like hit that glass ceiling of his level so hard years ago in OG, and he's always been a decent player if you put him at tier 2/tier 1.5, but he's never truly shown like the depth or the growth to go beyond that for me. So unfortunately, I think they have ended at this point in their careers. This is why I think it makes sense to wipe the deck. If Podi doesn't want to play, he's your best piece. The rest of them are just kind of like all right players who either never became anything big, or just maybe could have been once upon a time but weren't. Like, again, if I put this exact same roster of players into a squad like an OG, is anyone really that hyped? Is anyone making predictions for them and thinking they're going to, I think most people just go to just another kind of an OG-esque roster where we'll just see how this does for 6 months and then make another change.
Yeah, so let's get into some specifics then on individual players. Because as a core, they don't.
Sure.
I can't even make a VRS case. They're 61st on VRS or something like that.
It's not good.
Like, they're well out of major consideration. And part of the reason has been they've attended a lot of LANs and have been decent enough in terms of beating some of the shitter teams. They've given one or two of the teams that actually have some aspirations a good game, maybe beaten a couple of them. But generally they go out in like 5th to 6th, 7th, 8th. The lower bracket somewhere down in the mess of a Draculan, right? They've not actually been as successful as they need to be. And that's what caused their VRS to tank. But let's talk about SDY. Ukrainian, did some IGLing for this team, did some support play on Monty as well as IGL at some points. He had a fantastic, we talk about Espu, he was like a 117, like MVP considerations type of player. He has a level he can reach. We saw it at times even on Na'Vi. Like, there was times on Na'Vi where he was kind of the scapegoat / the point of failure, but there are other times where he actually played very decently for his roles. Can we talk about SDY on any of these sorts of Ukrainian teams potentially? Is there somewhere he can find a home? Because look, Bait have been more than willing to make moves and changes and attempt things. Like, could SDY join them? Not even necessarily IGLing, but hell, if the choice is like Alex reluctantly, NPL whilst he does all the fragging, or SDY, I mean, I'm leaning towards SDY.
That's actually, I'm very glad you're saying this, because the only logical quick association that my brain was making with SDY and another team was actually Bait. I think it's just a massive win if you pick him up, right? He's had the experience as an in-game leader, and obviously this is an internal conversation for them to have. Do you want NPL to be the IGL again? Do you want Alex to remain being the IGL? But I think if you are bringing SDY, one of the best things about him is that this guy is such a versatile player. You can put him in every position out there, and he's going to be able to do a good job. He's literally played everything. He's played rotation spots. He's been an anchor. He's played some star positions on ENCE as well, on CT sides. I think you can use him in so many different ways, and he's always been very good at multi-killing. He's always been very good at being the second voice of a team if he's not the IGL, and obviously he's bringing a lot of experience. So I think if you are Bait, you definitely are considering this, especially with, the lack of consistency that they've shown, and as you said, the willingness to make roster changes. The one thing that this Bait team has missed to actually go through the transition, I think, from being an exciting team to being a team that can stay permanently on, let's say, tier 1.5 and permanently play good Counter-Strike and not struggle for form every now and then, is dealing with pressure and losing close games. Well, how can you fix some of that? Bring someone that is a little bit more experienced, that's been in that situation and under these circumstances, that can potentially help everyone deal with it a little bit better, especially someone that now has the experience of playing with a lot of young players and having to navigate them and guide them. And he's failed as well, which I think on ENCE is actually a good thing for SDY in the long run, right? Because you fail, you learn. It's that entire very trivial conversation. But in that sense, I think SDY definitely could be used out of one of these teams. I mean, you look at all the teams, and even some online, well, not online, but some tier 2 teams that play primarily online Counter-Strike in some of these VRS lands. Some organizations like, I don't know, Fnatic, OG, that type of level where we're talking. I think SDY could be decent for these people. I don't see why not. Obviously, you're not bringing him to be the star player of the team, right? You're bringing him to just strengthen people up and be an extra level of, I guess, reassurance policy, bringing ideas, bringing experience, some calmness when it comes down to communication. But yeah, I don't see why not. I'd actually very, very much like to see him go over to bait now that I think about it a little bit more.
Like I say, I just want him to go back to being like an overqualified support. I think at that point he could actually bring a lot of value, and he would like raise the floor of a team essentially. So I think if you put him in that role, he can be in a bunch of teams that are better than him. He could be in like a heroic, a gamer legion. It depends how ambitious you want to get. By the way, why couldn't he play with people like Foot? Isn't what Foot lack like kind of a stable hand that helps you win the big games when you're in the tight matches? You know, this is the sort of role I think he could play. So I think there's a bunch of teams he could be in.
Yeah, the Foot one would be a brutal cut, because right now the only player anyone really feels like cutting is Symmetry. Like, no one really wants to cut Demon, no one wants to cut
Just
Jukes.
put SDY on the OP.
Honestly, he's done everything else. Why not try it? But no, one of the things that's also going to be a theme, I think, across all shows and also obviously later in ours, you know what? Why not stick him in FaZe? You could justify any player to go to FaZe almost at this point, given their performance. SDY could fill in almost every role. He could play Jacob's role. Fuck, he could take Karrigan's role off him. He could play what currently Twist is playing to allow Twist to do something else if that helps reinvigorate the team. There's so many options for him. I do think that's it's not like that realistic, but it's not idiotic to even consider it.
I wouldn't say FaZe, especially if we're talking the IGO conversation. I'm not really sure if I want to see SDY keep on being the in-game leader unless it's a very young Ukrainian team like Bait. I think that would be a step too far for him, because in the end of the day, ENCE had a lot of issues with other players, with a lot of constant roster changes, and there was probably some bad vibes on the team. But he was the in-game leader of this team, and this team was unsuccessful. We need to hold that for something, right? As much as I like SDY, I think the jump for him from failing to lead a team on a level that he's himself supposed to be dominating just by proxy with skill and experience, and not being able to achieve great success, to going into FaZe, for example, and being the IGO or something else, I think it's just a little bit silly to expect him to do well. But if he goes in as a support player, maybe there could be an angle. But I would still say, for me, the way forward for SDY should be go onto a team that is in the tier 1.5, tier 2 space with a lot of potential, with some good players, and that has a solid baseline, and just provide that extra piece of stability for this lineup.
By the way, even though we're like theory, I don't think sadly he's getting any of these offers. Like, unfortunately, I don't think his name rings bells in the same way as you'd hope. And that's like,
yeah, probably.
I imagine sadly he'll just slide off into irrelevance at this point, or do his own project. You know, maybe
probably a team like Eternal Fire or something like this.
Yeah,
just go to Waro and Demia.
9 a.m. Like he'll be on a team I watch at 9 a.m. That's what he might end up, and that I think would be a waste, especially with honestly, it's a very realistic Bait conversation, because they have just not been good. But a guy who should be in high demand no matter what, just because of his role, just because of how many teams cannot seem to figure this position out. Podi, if he can't find a team that's at least tier 1.5, like if Heroic aren't having conversations about signing him, because as great as Youngstar's been relative to expectation, and of course relative to some bias at every event that isn't stage 2 of EPL, if Podi's not at least getting a ring from them, if he's not getting a sniff in it with Liquid, if every org with 4, maybe 5 exceptions isn't talking to Podi's agent, I've got some genuine concerns. And it returns to the meme that I see repeated across different discords, that actually CS might be the only sport or esport that's anti-GM'd, where no one's really trying to win. Because what the fuck are we even doing if we're not considering Podi as a player? He's looked good enough for most of these teams.
I'm also surprised, by the way, that he doesn't somehow ever get into that mix of the like Regali type players of the world, where all these other squads that are like the FlyQuests and them, when they're like, we want the star up, why does he never get in that convoy? You know what I mean? So for me, he's right there in that bunch of players.
I think it's his style.
On a lesser
he's not
squad,
that
he
flashy,
could carry.
is he? He's not that
He's good though. If you ever watch him play,
I know he's good. I've profiled him. I've loved his game in terms of fundamentally being very sound, doing things the right way, and honestly, he's got a good hit rate. When he sees someone on his screen and they're in the scope, he hits it. He's just not going to do that bonkers shit you see players like. This is a deep pull, but Snow, the Swedish AWPer, hits the stupidest, most gangster shots. But there's a reason he's in tier 3. Like, he's not a consummate professional. And Podi really is, just looks like a professional AWPer. So I think that's maybe why, like, a FlyQuest don't notice him in the same way. It's because the highlight package is kind of dead.
I wouldn't say it's the highlight package. I'd say that, especially for me, because Podi is one of these players, again, that I've watched pretty much since the first day of his career when he was on ENCE Academy, on the We Play Academy League years ago. I just don't think he's got a very high ceiling, is how I'd put it with Podi. And I think at times he's just checked out. Like, he plays good Counter-Strike. That's one of the reasons I'm not actually that hyped up about Podi. I don't even think he's the most exciting player on this team. That's why it was funny when you mentioned the French teams, because or the French fans, because I am a Neityu, stance on this. But I think Podi is good for a team that has big issues with a very inconsistent AWPer that is going to be very, very hot, and then every now and then he's just going to have a good game and drop 30 kills, and that's going to be about it. I think he can stabilize the tier 2, tier 1.5 team, but I am struggling to see a world where, because I would put him in a similar profile in terms of style with, let's say, FaZe. I think a lot of people would want to compare him to FaZe, maybe, because they're both not the flashiest ever. But even with FaZe, you see that extra piece of X Factor. I think with Podi is just a little bit vanilla, maybe at times even a little bit boring. And I'm not the type of a person that appreciates only flashy AWPers, quite the opposite. I just don't feel I don't feel like he's, how do I say this for it not to sound too rude? I think at times he just checks out and he does things that don't make a lot of sense. At times he's just gonna go for a silly repeat, and the reason that it doesn't seem flashy is because he just does it like it's a normal thing, like he's very calm, right? But a lot of his repeats are not great. A lot of the util that he uses is not, utility wise lately has been alright, but at times it just feels like he's not on the same page with people, and he just does something random for a round, and that one random thing that he does is just gonna lose you the round. I just don't feel like he's got the highest ceiling ever. He's, again, solid. You can probably get a good performance out of him. And if a team on the other side is lacking a little bit, or they don't have a lot of skill, or they're, let's say, tactically not out of 10, maybe he can expose them. He's good with that. He can be a keeper type of AWPer. But I don't see why you would go for him if you can go for someone that's a little bit more, I guess, of a risk to take, but has a higher ceiling. Maybe if you have decided to do that and you've been disappointed over, let's say, 1 year as a team, that you've gone for someone, let's say, like Rinko, and he's not been able to deliver, maybe then you can give Podi a chance, right? And you can be like, well, at least we know we have a stable AWPer. He's not going to win us the game, but as long as we have 2 or 3 rifles that are very decent, or we have a star rifle or 2, then Podi can be a very good addition to the team. But I don't think he's the type of AWPer that you put on a team and you're like, okay, he's our best player. That means that the team is going the right direction. I don't think he should be the best player on your team if you want to win.
Underrated, maybe unpopular opinion, because the superstar AWPers are so impactful. I think people have been lulled into thinking that actually being flashy is better than being consistent with the fucking AWP. Like, the joke is, yeah, Wrinkle is the ultimate fool's gold, because when he hits crazy shots and super fucking simplest, then you're like, oh my god, this is awesome. But you'd still rather have Shiro right now. Shiro's day and night going to give you the fucking production, mate. And the difference is also, one of the reasons I think it's underrated to have a stable AWPer is you can base your game around what they're going to do. You know what shots they hit, you know where they hit them. You can actually play around that. It's a lot harder to play off the streaky play for me.
I agree. I just think Podi does some random stuff every now and then. I don't think he is as stable. I think his style is stable, and his style makes him look stable.
We've heard what you think about Podi. Here's the real question. How the fuck are you going to critique Podi like that and then be sat there secretly thinking Neityu's some fucking G? So go on then, explain to me how he's some fucking excellent player you want to have on a team. What team? Your fucking Grandma's team or something? What team's he joining, mate? I know she didn't say what team do you want him in. Go on then, which team should we put Neityu in?
So I did a little bit of research on the French scene, actually, and apparently 2D Max wanted to sign them, but they have financial issues because they got scammed with major money, so they couldn't get him. So what I heard, and that was a rumor, but I think there's some substance to it, was that they wanted to replace Exorcist with Neityu. some time ago, even now when they were making the Misuta change as well. So for me, the obvious answer is just get Neityu on a team like 3D Max, or even on a Liquid, by the way, if you want to replace Snap as an anchor. I think the one reason why Neityu has not been able to, you know, strike a lot of people down with being a star player is because he's not a star player. He's an anchor. He's a lurker. But for an anchor lurker type of guy, I think he has the mechanical ability to be a difference maker in so many rounds. The amount of crazy multi-kills and ways that he's put himself in a position to give himself a chance to win the round by himself as an anchor player on CT size that I've seen out of him is insane. And this is a quality that I value a lot. He's got very good energy as well, which I know should not be a quantifiable factor for every single player, but I've seen him play LAN and I've seen the way that he behaves. And I just think is positive, and he can bring good energy to a team like 3D Max that has been down, or a team like Liquid that has been down a lot. Mechanically, he's very, very strong.
Where are you getting that from? Wait a minute. First of all, we're going to let you just use energy as a vague term. Look, energy is actually also a scientific term. It can literally be measured in like kilojoules, for example.
No, he's a very positive guy.
You mean vibes and shit. How do you know that? Yeah. He's just some French guy on fucking ENCE. How do you know he's a positive guy?
Well, because I've seen him play LANs a lot of times. Maybe 3 or 4 LANs. I've been in the same place as
what
as
LANs
them.
were these? You hid him behind exactly. You hid him behind a garbage can watching a guy play in a fucking LAN cafe. What are you talking about? Okay, so because this guy had good energy at Dracula, and he now gets to join fucking 3D Max and go to the major.
Skill-wise, I think he has enough to be playing on a team like this. I mean, even when he joined ENCE initially, which was right before the Elise event that they won, he was one players of this event, and you remember that very well. I think he's been solid. And when we're talking about SDY being a good piece and Podi being a good piece, and we can use the argument that ENCE as a team was a bit of a shit house, but these guys are still decent players. We have to take it into consideration that the support anchor guy, when the team is not functioning well, is going to struggle number-wise as well, even if he is a good player, because
I always forget you come from
apart.
CCT, because you are the guy who has like 50 could-be players, and then what you do is, in 3 years, everyone will have forgotten 47 of them, and you'll, for 3 that are good, you'll be... I told you. In fact, I watched him the first second he came out of his mum's pussy. I'm like, give me a fucking break. Like, whatever, bro. You're just being optimistic about everyone.
No, I just told you I'm negative about Podi.
Fuck Podi. I'll tell you what, that Podi guy just hitting his 7 out of 10 difficulty shot. Fuck that guy. Get him out of my sight. Get him out of my sight. But I'll tell you what, that one time that Neityu told that sick joke and everyone went, great joke, mate. It's like, that's 3D Max material if I ever saw it. Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I'll just stand my arguments. I'll just wait for him to get an opportunity, and I'll just point towards it when he starts playing well on a higher level. I just believe the guy.
But the problem is that isn't a bet though, because again, if he doesn't make it in 6 months, I'm not ever going to bring it up because who gives a fuck? So it's not really much of a gamble, is it, on that one? Is it? So it's all good.
Well, not really. No, there's no guarantee he's going to make it, right? But I just believe in the guy. I think he has a lot of potential, and he's still very, very young. It's
right. Message PSA to young players out there: if you want to get hyped, just if you ever see Ted at a LAN, just start cracking jokes, patting people on the back, you know, tell them, let's go team, let's get this, we can do this. That's all it takes. That alone, you'll be straight into a top 20 team
on my channel, because every Monday I do a show with a Swedish guy who hypes Swedish players almost on the basis that they are sometimes great guys.
Right. Okay.
And I have to take I crack jokes about that all the time. But look, I'm actually a pro Neityu person. Like Neityu for me,
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Be really careful of fully pronouncing that name when you say it like that on the internet. It's all good.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but you'd be surprised when you watch some LANs how much you can actually tell about a player and the way he communicates and the way he gets frustrated in a game when you just stand beside them and watch them play and communicate.
Well aware of that. It's just, you know,
exactly.
I don't believe in Dex just because Dex is a cool dude, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know about Dex. That's
what I'm saying though. It's the same sort of thing where it's like, I don't care really that much. I need to see something with my eyes. But with Neityu, you're lucky. I actually kind of agree. I like the mechanics he has, and to be honest, the 3D Max argument is perfect because 3D Max are not bloody hell. Can this bloody thing focus? There we go. 3D Max have struggled with consistency, have no floor, and have multiple players who have stretches. I don't mean like a couple games, like just stretches of diabolically shit play. You could bring him in for Gravity, bring him in for Ecstasy at various points over the last year, and I'm 100% behind it. So I think Neityu, it's not so much that I think he's a guaranteed hits 3D Max, makes them super consistent top 8. It's more that if anyone in the French scene is going to ever get that chance, it's not Nidoria, it's not any of those Gen 1 players that are left behind that you'll have never heard of probably, unless you've suffered through one of their games. it is Neityu. Like, he has the most ability by a long shot, and yeah, some aspects of his game probably need refining. He's not really ever had that great of a setup for that to happen. So I think that opportunity is what I take. Like, if I was 3D Max and I was like, this guy's available cheap, I might risk it.
The beauty of Counter-Strike is we all analyze it in different ways. We all care about different metrics. I care about things like, what do you do when you roll? How do you fit in this tactical system? What level of resources do you require? Some people like to categorize players like they were talking to their mom about the great guy that they just met, that they're thinking of dating long term. They're like, he's a really cool guy. He's kind to animals. He's really ambitious too, you know. He has a high energy. He's going places. You know what? He's just a fucking dreamboat of a guy. I never understood that, because I was like, what about the CS? The CS floor? Is there any CS in there? Because the problem is, here's the problem with all vibes-based analysis. Vibes only matter when you have the baseline level of the team roles and the skill, etc. Once you have that, vibes are great, because that's the lubricant to make the engine go. But in this analogy, it's like having the best lubricant ever if you have awesome vibes, but you have no good players. But in a shit car, like, it still doesn't make it a great car, unfortunately. So that's why the issue for me is this. Like,
sure,
would he actually elevate 3D Max that much?
Yeah, that's the reason that I mentioned it as a list. I mean, that much is difficult, yeah, because it's still the same group of players, and you're still bringing a 21-year-old unexperienced guy to this team. But Vibes was not the main argument of the point. It's just an addition to the list of, he's got good mechanics, he's young, he has international experience. He is already French, so you can put him on the team. He's the type of guy that can over-deliver under pressure when he's put all alone on the bomb side, and you can rely on him to provide you with a multi-kill. He's got good communication, something I've talked to some of his teammates about and talked to people about. It's just a long list of things that make you believe that this guy has potential, and the fact that he could be a nice person for the mood of the team, which in a world where a lot of the teams that we're talking about, like NIP, like 3D Max, like Liquid, like FaZe, just look frustrated and like they don't want to be on the server, could be a nice addition. But that is not to mean that this is the only argument behind him being a decent player and having potential, right? It's the last thing, but it still could make a little bit of a difference. It's more about the fact that I believe that he can be a high quality player, and then maybe this could help a little bit as well when you're 3D Max and you've been playing with the same people, when you know each other, you finally bring a little bit of fresh air, a little bit of new blood. This could make everyone feel a little bit more motivated and make them feel like the game is even a little bit fresher to play also in a way. And plus that, because you did ask about the tactical aspect of things, what is one of the things that 3D Max were best at when they were actually playing good Counter-Strike and beating some of the best teams? That was being proactive on the CT sides and just pushing and setting up all their players to have freedom and play up in your face Counter-Strike, take space, play for information. Neityu is great at that. He can be proactive, he can be passive as well. You can open up freedom for people on the other side of the map, and you can leave him alone on the bomb side because he's a reliable guy, and you can send him in to be the aggressive anchor that makes a move with someone else when he has support. So that's why I think he could be good for 3D Max. That's why I think he could be good for Liquid. I just believe in the potential of the guy, and I think all around he's a decent player.
Okay. That's the Neityu case. One I didn't think we'd have to make. Quite, to be honest, I didn't think, Ted, you were a particularly pro Neityu guy. I thought we'd get through SDY, Podi, and I thought that'd kind of be the wrap. But hey,
oh no, I love Neityu, man. I love Neityu.
Let's get into a team.
Unless you couldn't tell.
I know it was subtle. Let's get into a team that nobody has a lot to say that's positive. We do like a little bit of negativity every now and then, and let's be clear. FaZe are diabolically shit. I've used the word bad on screen just for monetization reasons, but famously, the YouTube algorithm can never detect my voice saying things. It can just read them, so I can say whatever I want. They have been truly horrific. And let's discuss that. Ted, what's been going wrong with FaZe? Do you have any specifics to break down?
So I'm not sure of how many of the graphics we're going to be able to show that we have prepared for this one, because there are some very good examples of what has been going on with FaZe. But the big story for a lot of people is that FaZe, probably the worst thing that could have happened to this team was get to the Star Ladder Budapest Major Final, because that made them not make any changes. And since the start of 2026, the state of FaZe clan has been very atrocious. They've been in a very, very bad state. So they've played 12 best of threes after the major final in all tournaments that they've played so far in 2026. They've won 3 of them against Monty, Heroic, and BC Game. Those are the only 3 wins out of 12 series. They finished 12-14 at EPL. They finished 1-3 in the main Swiss stage of PGL Cluj-Napoca, 9-12, bombed out of IM Krakow, and they lost their opening online matchup in the Blast Bounty to the Eyeballers. Now, what we're going to take a look at here is we had a couple of examples, but we're going to use one round and then a screenshot to kind of put into perspective everything or some of the things that have been going wrong with FaZe. This round we're going to take a look at is from Dust 2 against the side of Monty. It's round number 19, and we've got FaZe Clan on the T side. Now, why we're looking at the T side and emphasizing on that is because this is looking at the T side of a team like FaZe is the best way to actually picture the lack of preparation, the fact that sometimes watching FaZe even feels like you're watching a team that's a little bit tactically lazy. So the round is going to play. We're going to see FaZe set up with some default utility in towards middle, molly short, smoke B doors, one player starts long, one more starts top middle. Afro's going to get killed through the smoke onto Karrigan and towards mid, and that puts him in the 4v5. Now, what do you want to do in that 4v5 is, as the round keeps on playing, you will see FaZe starting to set up for a bit of a mid to B split. And what we're paying attention to right now is the way that FaZe are actually going to play this one utility-wise. So we're paying a little bit of attention on the utility that everyone has. You're looking at the amount of flashes. There's a decent amount, so they can set themselves up. You see the lurk smoke in towards B, the molly in towards doors, the molly deep in towards short. So far, so good. They've cleared out middle. The split smoke comes through, and now the split should come through, and Twist is the one responsible for the utility. Now, we can pause the round for a second. Can we pay attention to the fact that Twist, who's the guy that is supposed to flash his teammates out, he has one flash. Everyone else on the team has one more flash as well. And why that is important is because when you're setting up for a round like this and you've pushed the CTs away from short and you know there could be one guy towards the CT smoke and you know in towards B you've put a little bit of pressure, but there's probably two players in a 5 versus 4 like this, there will be two players on the left-hand side. One flash to go out of middle is probably not enough, and you probably want a second one. So the round is going to keep on going. They go out middle. The flash comes out. And the first thing that happens here is you see the spacing, you see the left-hand side smoke. Azu, who was playing behind the door, just gets a free kill onto Jacob. Broke is too far away to get that refrag. In fact, he doesn't even go out the smoke to try and chase that because he hears Gizmy come through. He gets blinded as well. In the meantime, the utility in towards B is coming in, but that doesn't really do much because Azu can just get the kill and turn around. And this round from here on out is absolutely unwinnable. They don't have the second flash to go through and chase the refrag. They need to cancel that entire play. The smoke in towards CT spawn fades as well, and they kind of missed the timing on that to go out. Even if they wanted to play on the fade with the left-hand side smoke, it just didn't feel like the timing on the flash and the smoke was great. And this is how FaZe just call a save straight away. This round is one very small example of the lack of, I don't want to even say lack of communication, but the way that FaZe just look a little bit idealist. It looks a little bit too weak in terms of the preparation. And in a lot of the games, there was a couple of examples in the Dust 2 that they played against Astralis as well, where you can see
that example was from the game they won as well.
Yeah, no, they win the map. They win the map. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy part, by the way, because some of the things that they're calling, and there was a couple of examples against Astralis as well, is that they can win a map, and some of these rounds can work, but these are the maps that work against teams that will panic a little bit or teams that don't have the best reactions ever. But when we're talking FaZe Clan with Karrigan, who's supposedly in the conversation for the Gold IGO, you're expecting to see some level of tactical stability that is comparable to the best teams in the world. And the scrappy Counter-Strike that FaZe play is nowhere near. A lot of the times you will see people not even having set lineups for flashes, flashing each other, eating flashes from the CT side, which are very basic and people should be aware of that are coming on a certain timing. It just feels like they're YOLOing it a lot of the time. They're missing out timing. Some of the utility that they're using is not even meta. And one of the things that I wanted to show as well, which is going to be the second thing to kind of emphasize on that entire idea that FaZe is not up to date with what people are doing in tier 1. And so a lot of the utility that they're using is very old. It's not really on the tactical level that you'd expect out of them. Is that screenshot that I think T should be able to show on screen any moment now, which showcases... I don't know if we have it on the screen right now, so I can.
It's on screen.
Start
it's on screen. Talk through.
Okay, it's on screen. So on the screen, we can see where the flashes of FaZe Clan falling towards the A-bomb side on Dust 2 when they're playing T side. In the red circles, you see the areas where all the meta flashes that are being used by basically every single tier 1 team that is good on Dust 2 are falling. and now try and count how many of the phase flashes actually fall in these circles and how many of the scaling flashes going up on a short execute towards the A-bomb side. You know, the flashes going down deep CT to flash the long players, flash the guys that are trying to come through CT, flash the guys that are playing car, ramp, all of these flashes that people are using. FaZe are just not using them, or they're using them very, very rarely. I mean, from that screenshot that we're looking at, there's 3 flashes that fall into the circles. And those are circles that have not been drew randomly, by the way. Those are the areas where all big teams actually pop their flashes nowadays. So what I'm making out of what's going on with FaZe is that even when they win a map, even if they win a series, a lot of it comes down to just creating chaos and being able to thrive when the other team gets nervous. A lot of the times they're not going to use the proper flash, for example, to go out long late when they're going through the smoke. They will use the default flashes, like they want to push someone off the angle when they have no other presence elsewhere, and they're just the guy standing in front of the smoke in long doors, just getting a triple kill because he's not blinded, because these are not the flashes you should be using for that angle. So a lot of the times it just feels like they're tactically behind. They're checked out. They get blinded by very basic utility. They're blinding each other. Communication is not great. It's just a team that tactically is not nowhere near what a top 10 team should be looking like right now on the T sides.
Yeah, it's not just people aren't hitting their shots. It is fundamentally
people hitting their shots
team.
Is the reason that sometimes they win a map.
Exactly, yeah. If you look at these series they win over Monty, we're talking about, like, Frozen dropped a 126, 40 kills across 2 maps. Twist is a 126 rating as well. These 2 guys found massive pockets of impact, and that helped break the game open or swing it in their favor. 13-11, 13-11 over Monty. That's your win at Pro League. It's not like you had some sort of close fought 2-3 exit where you lost to, like, one of the top 5 teams in the world in that 2-2 bracket, and you're just hard done by. No. This team was bad. They went 1-3. Their one win was supposed to be a gift because it's a team that's barely trying to escape tier 2 to tier 1.5, like find that kind of level and that kind of stability. You struggle to get through them, and it's purely because you have 2 of the best, like, players in the world. Like last year, both those guys were top 5, maybe top 6 riflers, top 10 players. That's the only thing keeping this team alive. Like Neo and Karrigan, I mean, Coach and IGL should be under the microscope right now. They're in the hot seat. And when people talk about this team making changes, we talk about Brokey, we talk about Jacob, and it's like, yeah, I could see a better AWPer in this position. I could maybe see a different rifler coming in, give them a different look. Historically, FaZe have been a sort of a 3 rifle, no clear support. Sometimes it's a bit wishy-washy kind of team. You could see a more talented, more skilled tier 1 player in those Jacob spots and maybe doing more. But also we have to talk about the fact that, Lord, they just don't play good CS. And as you've pointed out, they don't play up-to-date CS, let alone good, well-coordinated, well-executed CS. This team is just dire, and you could cut almost anyone and it'd be fine by me.
One of the reasons why I think that the Jacob edition was so ill thought out even before I saw him play is because the entire theory of how FaZe play in the Karrigan era is you have very good players who are essentially self-directed, and you create a loose paradigm within which you make key calls at key moments, but the rest of it you trust that the player kind of has his own mini ability to call what he wants to do and where he wants to go. It's not a team where it's not a Blade squad where you hold people's hands and you have a turn to page 17 and then everyone, right, we're at 25 seconds. They're not that sort of a team. So it's why when they added Jacob, the first thing I even thought was, listen, Rain had plenty of flaws, but actually that was one of Rain's strengths, is that he could operate within a freelance system like that and just be a supportive element around the rest of the team. The other problem you have as well is one of the worst moves of bringing in this roster where they've had Twists is Twists individually is excellent, but he doesn't actually, this is why I think the Twists version of FaZe technically is worse than the Elige version. Because in the Elige version, one thing you had on the T side that was actually a slam dunk is you had this mega duo that Elige would hard entry and then Frozen would trade him, and that worked so often it was nuts. Like, at the time, in contrast, we all hated it because they couldn't win tournaments. I tell you what, it got you to the playoffs every fucking time though, and you still had like plenty of close games against good teams. You look at that now, you wistfully wish they had something like that on the T side here, because the T side numbers for FaZe are terrible. And I'll tell you the worst side of all, that was a miracle what happened at the major, is if you go and look at the major, they did all their work on Inferno and Nuke. Are you ready for the stat? This year on LAN, they have played Inferno and Nuke collectively 8 times and won it 0. Not a single win on the 2 maps that this roster took them to the major final. I mean, those are the maps where the reason why they were able to get past, the Navis of the world and the majors. So that's one of the reasons. Like, I always point this out to people. Whenever you have world-class players, but you don't have one map you're world-class on, that is a massive red flag for your team.
Yeah, everything's gone wrong. It's a shambles, and no, I think there's something to be said as well for Elige as far as he's had. There's been things that have been problems about him in the past, in terms of the way he interacts with teammates potentially, his thoughts on how teams should be run compared to how the IGL thinks they should be run, and he's not historically the most. He's just not great at expressing it, and his style of expression can sometimes come into question. But he is meticulous. He understands, what kind of plays he wants to go for, how he wants to go for them, the kind of utility that needs to be used. He is a one-man coach in that sense when it comes to his own job. Device-esque at times, when back you remember Prime Device was a hardcore prepper. Losing that element, I think that's the other part of it. It's not just that the balance has shifted, it's also that you're missing now a guy who knows the meta flashbang, knows every meta smoke, every meta molly, and will use them properly. You're missing that aspect, so there's not in the team holding up that end of the game. It's all falling down.
Yeah, it just feels a little bit lazy when you're watching FaZe Clan play on T side, because I agree with you, Duncan, and that's why I was actually excited watching FaZe, and as any other Counter-Strike fan, I guess. It's because they have these 5 people that are all good at the game. They all know how the game should be played. They're all up to speed with everything, and they just free ball it, right? And they have the freedom. They make crazy things happen. But when those 5 guys just look out of date with some of the things that they're doing, then it looks a little bit lackluster, because the utility is going to be outdated. The things that they're calling for are going to be a little bit old, and people are going to be very much used to them. Even if you are playing that freestyle type of Counter-Strike, I think if you're FaZe, this is going to work when the pressure, when shit hits the fan, pretty much. When the pressure is at the highest, or where you're playing an unexperienced team. But this is not the style of play that's going to cut it in group stage games when tier 1.5 teams that are tactically basically better than you are not feeling the pressure. They're just going to expose you, and they're going to make it look like it's easy for them to gap you pretty much tactically, even if you can still win on the back of individuals, even if you still have more experience and maybe you can pull off some clutches. It's just the fact that they've not been playing good Counter-Strike. And I think FaZe is probably one of the teams that should be in the conversation with Liquid and maybe some others, that some changes might need to happen before the major for me. Even after the major, it could be a little bit late, because it is very difficult to imagine that this team is just going to do well until the end of the season in any event.
By the way, that's also the Jacob point I make. One of the weirdest things about that pickup for me is it's like Neo, Karrigan, and FaZe collectively didn't understand what project they're running. Because I'll give you an obvious example, right? Even though arguably he's not that much better now, Sunpius in G2, the reason why I always would have gambled on someone like that coming into a FaZe to replace a Brokey is because, again, it's a player that has had the experience at the top level and has been a star and can be self-directed to some degree. One of the weirdest things is, I agree with what you said earlier, Kingt. If we run FaZe as in we're going to have players like Jacob, then yeah, Neo, you better pull your fucking finger out, mate. You better get to work. Like, we're going to have to make this a system and a structure, because I always say this, right? The best example ever in sports of the difference between a structure and having star players is Michael Jordan's Bulls teams in the NBA, because famously, when Phil Jackson joined the Bulls in like 1989 or 90 or whatever it was, what happened was Michael Jordan apparently said to him early on, like, I don't want to play this triangle offense system, that'll limit my game. And what Phil Jackson told him was, oh no, the system, the triangle offense isn't for you. You're going to break the system when you need to and take over the game and win. You're the best player in the world. The system is for the other players to know where to be on the floor to play effectively around you when you do choose to break it. Like, that's the part that, so my problem with this is, essentially, FaZe has betrayed their identity. The whole point of the last 3 to 4 years of FaZe is, it's the finishing school you go to when you're already a world-class player to win your championships. You don't do it as your first tier 1 team like Jacob, or you definitely don't do it when you no longer have the star power game like Brokey. Like, at that point, you are not only going to drown, you are going to drown in the most outrageously obvious way ever. Like, there's no structure anymore to hold you up and to keep you in place and to keep doing what you do and making sense. In this scenario, what you're basically saying to Brokey most games is, run out there and die a bunch of times. Like, that's all he's going to be able to do. There's no special like set play for him. We're going to get him into this position, then we're going to use utility to get him. That's not the type of opera he is. So I also think that's another flaw in phases. Like, they seem to have, like, beyond player ability, like an identity crisis of who is this team.
Yeah, a lot to figure out, and well, hopefully for FaZe they can get it done. Some players available, I'm sure, in the scene they can look at, and maybe some moves that need to come through. But until they do, it's probably not going to improve at any significant rate. It's going to keep being a disaster, keep being messy, and yeah, we'll keep watching and probably a little bit laughing. But yeah, that's going to be all for this one. Thank you all for joining me, and thank you for everyone who watched. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment if it's your thoughts on any of these topics, any of these players. Sub for more. Remember that becoming a member is the best way to support the channel. We'll see you all next time.